On the chamber and galleries, please rise and join us today in a prayer by the gentleman from McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us pray. Creator God, who has made us from the dust, it is by your sovereign power that you allow us to breathe in and exhale in this and every moment. Lord, may you guard us from the lie that we govern supreme, for we do not. As your prophet Daniel wrote, it is you who controls the events of this world, you who raises up leaders and cuts them down. It is you who gives wisdom and understanding. As we embark upon this new year and another legislative session, help us to invest in what lasts. Help us to remember the treasures of this earth are subject to decay, and they will not last. Help us to not be so caught up in the temporal matters of the day that we neglect to stop and offer an encouraging word or inquire about a colleague's sick child. May you grant us these things, giving us the eyes to see what matters and what does not, and the ability to discern the difference. This I pray according to your will. Amen.
Please remain standing and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move for the approval for the House Journal for the 8th day, Tuesday, January the 18th, 2022, and I ask for a roll call vote.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has moved for the approval of the House Journal for the 8th day, Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. Are there any additions or subtractions to the Journal? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the Journal vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Ms. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 143 yes, 3 no, and 2 present, you have approved the House Journal for the 8th day, Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be first reading of House bills and House joint resolutions.
Mr. Clerk, please read the House bills and House joint resolutions.
House Bill number 2485, introduced by Knight, an act relating to promoting advanced recycling. House Bill number 2486, introduced by West, an act relating to bail bond agents with penalty provisions. And House Bill number 2487, introduced by West, an act relating to persons who are deaf or hard of hearing.
Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be introduction of special guests.
Introduction of special guests. A lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guest, please.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, to your right is a group of kiddos and their moms. Well, wait, I'm one of their moms. I got 2 kiddos in there, Asher and Gracie, and the last time they were here, they were little bitty, and now my son is taller than me. But these are their classmates from Most Sacred Heart in Missouri, and their mamas that drove them all the way here, and I appreciate you guys so much. And I just want everybody to give them a warm welcome to the House of Representatives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further introductions. Lady from Carroll.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, today we have a very esteemed group here in the Capitol to visit with us individually and collectively, and they are the members of the Missouri Association of County Clerks and Election Authorities, the hardest working people in your courthouse. Please make them feel welcome when they come around. Thank you, Speaker.
Further introductions. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guest.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To your right and my left, between the 5th and 6th column, is my cousin, Grant Gordon. We won't hold that against him. He's from Southern Illinois. We won't hold that against him either, but he's at SIU Carbondale getting an accounting and a law degree, and he's going to do great things. Hopefully one day he'll be a politician just like his older cousin. I'd ask the body to give him a nice warm welcome.
Further introductions. Gentleman from Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guest.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To your left and my right in the upper gallery between the 2nd and 3rd column, I've got Andrew Nelson and David Cameron from the City of Republic here today to talk about what's going on in Republic, some of the cool projects that they've got going on, so if the body could make them feel welcome.
Further introductions. Gentleman from Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guests.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To your right, my left, between the 4th and 5th columns, we have 2 gentlemen here with us that I have tremendous respect for. Sheriff Will Aiken is here this morning with Sergeant John Bizzano, and they're here from the Clay County Sheriff's Office, and certainly appreciate Will and his friendship. I am a chaplain for the Clay County Sheriff's Office, and due to my work here, I don't have as much discretionary time, but he's been very kind to make adjustments. But just want to have the House welcome them and send them a warm welcome.
Further introductions. Gentleman from Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of special guest.
Proceed.
To your left and my right in the upper gallery, Miss Stephanie Spencer. She's the Chief Deputy Clerk from Taney County. One of my constituents. Welcome to the House. Give her a big thank you from the House.
Further introductions. Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Introduction of a special guest.
Proceed.
To your left and my right, in between the 3rd and 4th column from St. Charles County, we have our election director, election authority, Kurt Barr. I also hold the seat that he used to sit in the 102nd District in St. Charles County. Please give him a big round of applause.
Welcome back to the House, gentlemen. Further introductions. Lady from Jackson.
introduction of a special guest, Mr.
Proceed.
Speaker. To your left and my right, I'd like to introduce and welcome some supporters and folks from KCPS, Kansas City Public Schools. We have alumni, students, the superintendent, Dr. Bedell, Linda Quinley, the CFO. I want to congratulate them on receiving their full accreditation and also welcome current student Lindsay Richardson, who just recently got accepted to Yale, and also Ani Oltree, who's a KCPS graduate, who is currently studying at UMKC Biology Pre-Med. Please welcome them to the House.
Further introductions. Seeing none, gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be House bills for third reading, and I ask that you again recognize the gentleman from Jefferson. We're going to backtrack here. Let's do messages from the Senate.
Mr. Clerk, please read the messages from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I'm instructed by the Senate to inform the House of Representatives that the Senate has taken up and adopted House Concurrent Resolution 51. The President Pro Tem has appointed the following committee to act with a like committee from the House pursuant to the House Committee Resolution 51. Senator Schatz, Hegman, Onder, Riddle, Wieland, Razor, Williams, Shoup, Mosley, and May. Respectfully, Adrian D. Krause, Secretary of the Senate.
Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, we'll move to House bills for third reading, and I ask you to recognize the gentleman from Jefferson for a motion on House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117.
Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117 be third read and passed.
The gentleman from Jefferson has moved for the third reading and passage of House Committee substitute House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Committee substitute for 2117 was debated yesterday. We had a lot of debate, a lot of conversation. The conversation went beyond this room. It has been talked about for several weeks now, months now. As I started yesterday, I talked about the process. I walked the House through the process of how this bill came to here. What I didn't focus on was what happens after today. If and when we third read and pass this bill, what happens next? Contrary to some belief out there on the internet, it does not go into law. It has to go to the east side of this building, to the Missouri State Senate, where it will go through the exact same process it went through in the House. It'll go to committee. There'll be debate. There'll be a committee meeting. There'll be discussion. Amendments will be offered, or you could offer an amendment in committee in the Senate. They're no different than us. When it comes out of committee, it goes through that process. It'll have to pass committee. It'll have to come to the floor of the Senate, where we all know amendments can be offered in the Senate. They've adopted similar rules to ours, and they will have an opportunity to go through the process. If they agree House Bill 2117, or House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117, is their choice and they pass it, it would then go to the governor. If they decide to make substantial changes to it, it comes back here, and we can decide whether to take it up or go to conference. This vote today on third read and passage of House Committee Substitute 2117 is simply a vote to say, this is our product. We've went through the process. Now it is your turn to take to the process and do what you want with the bill and decide at that point. They'll make their decision, and that's how it should work. I've been very committed to the process. I want to thank everyone for the process, the work on it. And rather than me ramble any longer, I would like to renew my motion if there's no further questions.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jackson.
Speak on the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, and most of all, to the general public. This task is once in a decade, and we must get it right. If not right, as close to being right as possible. This bill is not what the citizens of this state deserves. District core and communities of interest does not remain intact. This map continues to be not reflective of Missouri, and I would be a strong no on this. There are splits that really shouldn't happen. The military bases are split. Communities of interest are destroyed by this map. So follow my lead and vote no. Thank you.
Further discussion. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speak on the bill.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Yesterday I voted no on both versions of the map. I voted no on the one that Representative Hicks put forward because I thought it wasn't a very good bill. I voted no on the bill that the representative put forth, and I said, I have problems with it. It's not a perfect bill. It's not what my congresswoman wanted. I said, well, I'm going to support her, and I'm going to vote no on that. Today we're faced with a whole different issue. Today we're faced, are we going to do our job and send something over? As the representative said, this is a part of a process that is long. We're going to pass something out of here, and what we're going to pass in the end is not going to look anything like that, because we got another side of the building that they're going to go to war over there, and frankly, that's all they do. What's most disturbing is today I received messages from leadership in the other side of the building that if I didn't change my vote, oh my God, I'm going to be punished. You know what that made me want to do? It made me want to vote no on this thing. I'm not going to do that. I made a commitment to our leadership that I would vote yes today because I want the process to move forward. Because I think we need to do our job. We need to get some maps done. And we're not, any of us, going to be happy. I understand that the representative isn't happy with the maps as they were drawn. Either am I. That's not where we're going to end up with. We all know that. We all know that there's going to be a war on the other side of the building. There's going to be compromises made. We're going to go into a conference. We're going to have our say. I'm going to vote yes for it. And I'm going to vote yes on the EC. But for God's sakes, why can't we be statesmen around here? Why the hell do we have to, why do we have to threaten each other? Why do we have to go on the internet and just call each other names? That's not the way this process is supposed to work. And I'm frankly ashamed of the leadership on that side that would make threats against me. And I'm ashamed of the people on the other side of the building that are friends and I support that are vilifying the people here that made a vote yesterday, that it's their vote. Every one of us were elected by the same amount of people. 37,000 people sent me here to do a vote, to vote my conscience for them. And each of you had that same amount of people. It's your vote. Vote your conscience. But let's be statesmen. Let's get this thing moving on, and let's have the fight. This fight isn't going to end today. This fight's going to end weeks from now after all of the hoopla, after the war that goes on over there, after the conferences, and after it comes back here. We're not just going to settle for a map. They're not going to settle for a map. We're not going to settle for a map. We're going to have to be statesmen and agree on a map. It's the only way this thing's going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Lady from St. Louis City.
To speak on the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, lady.
Thank you. Yesterday, we were having a conversation. It was supposed to projected to be about a 4-hour debate, 2 hours for each side to get their point across. And it didn't even take us that long, surprisingly. But there was a moment in there where we were having a very real conversation about voting rights and about protecting voting rights districts. We have one of the very few remaining voting rights districts in this state, one. And if we can increase it and could have increased it by either 1%, 0.5%, or whatever it was, we should have done that. And we chose not to do it for the sake of saying, let's just send it across as is and let the other side fight it out. Wow. We tuck our tail between our legs for the sake of just letting some other group fight it out. I will be voting no against this for the simple fact that we had the opportunity to increase the power of a minority majority district in this state. We had that opportunity to do so. The day after, everybody in this chamber quoted one of the leaders of the entire civil rights movement focused on voting rights, amongst other issues. And yet we spat on that legacy, yet again, showing that we did not care. But we care when it's a holiday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from St. Charles County.
Permission to speak from a mic other than my own.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this has been a grueling process, happens every 10 years. None of us sitting in this body here, and most of the staff was not here when we did this 10 years ago. And a lot has changed since that time. But before I get into that, Mr. Speaker, you and the gentleman from Jefferson, sponsor of 2117, I want to thank you both past several weeks, having an open door, having an open line to try and create the best map that listens to the people of Missouri, that listens to different congressional members, that listens to members of the House and the Senate. And I think at the end of the day, today, I think I may be on the different side of some of my good friends here in this body, but I'll tell you why. You know, 10 years ago, like I mentioned, and I mentioned this on the floor yesterday, we weren't arguing about adding 2 left-leaning states to our union just to get more congressional representation. We weren't arguing about protecting the Hyde Amendment under threats that this will be repealed. We weren't arguing about employers funding abortions across this nation. We weren't arguing about federalizing elections, getting rid of the filibuster, and stacking the Supreme Court. We weren't arguing about fundamentally changing the American way of life. But we are now. You know, 10, 20 years ago, we were able to reach across the aisle in this building and in D.C. more so than we are today. I would argue that many, many things have inflamed the political divisiveness in this nation. But we've come to a time when there is so much on the line. Us that have kids, that have grandkids, know that we're not fighting in this building for us. We're fighting for our future, for their future, to give a better life to our kids and our grandkids and their kids than what we had. And Mr. Speaker, I've told you this in private and public. I've told many friends on the right and the left how appalled I am that we have states on one side of the political aisle, New York, Illinois, California. What are they doing? They're doing something that is legally allowed. I don't want to talk about if it's just and proper and fair, but it is legally allowed in states that have not put a prohibition on gerrymandering, on creating districts to benefit the party that is in control. So you have states on one side that are redrawing maps to benefit the Democrat Party and bring more Democrat representation. And I'm not talking about the Democrats of JFK or Truman. I'm talking about the Democrats of AOC, Pelosi, Schumer, that are wanting to fundamentally change our nation for the worse. Then you have states like Tennessee, Texas, Florida, doing the opposite, creating these maps saying, okay, well, let's play that chess game. Let's create maps that have more representation for the Republicans. And I challenge each and every one of us to look at the different maps, the ones that I've recommended, ones that other colleagues have recommended, to keep, as some colleagues have said here today, certain communities of interest together. And Mr. Speaker, I know you and the bill sponsor have seen for decade after decade St. Charles County one of the fastest growing in terms of population, economic development, Republican representation, split into 3 congressional districts. We've seen the fastest growing county in terms of population, economic development, and the top in terms of being a Republican stronghold, split into 2. So I do understand the issue that many people have, feeling like the wicked stepchild and forgotten by certain members when push comes to shove and issues are very important to that county. But again, the reason I will be voting no today on this map, some say a yes vote is to push forth the status quo, to keep what we have. I arguably think we're going backwards as a conservative. I think this map, and again, I will praise everyone involved, Republican, Democrat, that had spent months working on this, hearing testimony. But sometimes after all of that, I disagree with the final result, and this is one of those instances. Because I think that this map that we push forward will actually open the door for the next Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, AOC, to run in District 2. I think we can do better. I'm hoping that we will have a discussion, which I know we discussed a little bit yesterday. I'm hoping we'll continue that discussion on the other side of the building. But I think a no vote tells individuals like Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, and the rest of the radicals that we are standing on the line and protecting Missouri values and ensuring that Nancy Pelosi will not be Speaker come next year. I would encourage each and every one of you to vote no. Thank you.
Further discussion. Lady from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wasn't going to speak today, but this map has a finger jutting out from CD1 into CD2 that encompasses my district. CD1 is a voting rights district, and my district is working to reconcile with a history of racism in the district. I don't agree with that being part of a voting rights district. I've heard about communities of interest, and this finger that juts out into my district does not work with communities of interest, and I disagree with that. So because of that finger jutting out into my district, bringing my district into a district that's very different, I'm going to be voting against this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Lady from Montauk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the bill.
Proceed.
Thank you. So I spoke previously on the House floor, and many of you were here to hear those comments as to why I was no on this, on perfection, and as to why I was a yes on the 7-1 amendments that were offered. And I just want to say that, the bill sponsor worked incredibly hard, as did the committee, to try to put together what, in his words, was a fair map. And what did we hear on the floor on perfection? The Democrats in this body voted no, and they're going to vote no today. We bend over backwards as the Republican Party. We get called unfair and as if we're not listening to the minority party. And what do? We work with them all the time, and they still vote against what we put forward. Our country, as I said before, our nation and America is under attack by radical socialist agendas. The amendment sponsor, which amendment on whatever the software, I guess, had some strange error or something, and we're looking at that. So that amendment got disregarded, but he makes excellent points. My people in the district and people through the state of the Missouri are saying, let's stand up to be able to ensure that we are defending liberties and freedoms and the rights of Missourians and the rights of Americans at this time, this little window that we have to stand here and to represent them in the positions of power that they put us here. And the people of Missouri have given us a mandate by sending strong, overwhelming numbers of Republicans here. And so I will be a no on this because I think we should be standing strongly and boldly for the people of Missouri. And I encourage, and I'm encouraged to hear that there are senators on the other side of the chamber that are also taking up this battle to stand up in this time that we have for freedom and for liberty and for our God-given rights, and hopefully be able to save America. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to inquire of the lady from Montauk.
Lady from Montauk, do you yield?
I do.
Proceed.
Hi, good morning,
Hey,
lady.
gentlemen, good
How you
morning.
doing? So you mentioned that y'all worked with Democrats on this.
I wasn't on the redistricting committee. I know there were Democrats on that committee. Yes, sir.
But I'm talking about what you just said in your speech a second ago. You said that y'all work with Democrats all the time, and Democrats just gonna vote no anyway. So.
Yes, in fact, I believe that the Democrat minority floor leader made a speech maybe a week or two ago saying that the Democrats passed 20 priorities this past session with Republicans in charge. So yes, we obviously worked with you to get those passed.
Okay.
As a body, not me individually.
Okay. So 20 provisions, not 20 bills, but about 20 provisions out of, I don't know, hundreds. But anyway, that wasn't what I was getting at. We were talking about this specific bill, and you said that you weren't on the committee, so I wanted to know at what point you all worked with Democrats on this, because you mentioned that you work with Democrats, and we just gonna vote no anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, there were Democrats on the committee. The bill sponsor worked incredibly hard. I can tell you he was working incredibly hard. Like I said, the bill sponsor and I disagree on the results of this, but he and leadership, upper leadership, worked incredibly hard to make sure that everybody was listened to and that everybody, as they came together on those conversations, and I won't speak for him, he can speak for himself, but that's what he said earlier on this floor, and I know that he did that as well. Yes, sir.
All right, well, I'm just talking specifically to your speech. So you said Democrats were listened to. Is that what you mean by working with, just like listening to us talk? I want to know, like, what part of this map is what Democrats had to say? What part did Democrats pitch into this?
I know that the amendments that were offered that would have, I mean, some arguably this map could be a 5-3 district. That's one argument. It could be a 6-2, could be a 5-3. It all depends on who you talk to. The amendments that your party offered yesterday would have made it even more less strong of a conservative map. And again, like I said, two different parties. You know, you're going to fight for your side in view of things. Our side's going to fight for our side of things. I'm fighting for the strongest conservative map that we can get because I want to stand up and fight for America, and that's what my constituents are telling me to do. I've got a very a district of folks.
I hate to cut you off, but that's you going. I want to know specifically what part of this map Democrats contributed to, not what you gave us or what you think that we should want.
Do you serve on the redistricting committee?
I don't.
Well, I don't either, and so I can't tell you exactly what piece that you worked on.
In your speech, you said that y'all work with Democrats, and we're not going to vote for it anyway. Honestly, if the body would approve the amendment to make the congressional district 1 more indicative of what the district should actually be, which means going out to Maryland Heights rather than going to South County, then I would have voted for it. But you didn't work with me. I didn't have anyone ask me what it would take to get my vote on the emergency clause or to get my vote on the bill at all.
Well, the chairman of that's not how committees work. The chairman doesn't go around asking every single member what their thoughts
That's
are.
not how committees work, but we're on the floor right now. I got to vote on this floor.
That's right.
And nobody asked me what it would take to earn my vote, so I'll be voting no. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, may I inquire of the gentleman from St. Charles, Troy District?
Gentleman from St. Charles County, do you yield?
Yes.
Proceed.
Good morning, gentlemen. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. So you mentioned gerrymandering, and you said you won't say if it's right or wrong, but so were you saying that your map that you proposed was gerrymandered?
Oh, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a gerrymandered map, because I know that there were discussions, I think a couple years ago, on what is gerrymandering. Is it the spaghetti noodle districts that you see in Illinois? But when you look at the definition of gerrymandering, it's basically to benefit one party or not. And I think when you look at my map yesterday, the 04H, that was done in a way when you look at how that area has voted in the past several elections. It was to ensure that we have more conservative representation out of those areas. Now, again, we could have a discussion, and we could have it right now if you want to, if that's right or wrong. But
let
me finish my answer, gentlemen. Let me finish my answer, gentlemen.
To ensure that a conservative
would you like to hear my answer, or would you just like to continue asking question after question without me finishing?
You answered my question sufficiently to what I asked. So to ensure that a conservative representative represents the area, is that gerrymandering?
I don't think it's, to me, classified as gerrymandering, but when you look at the definition of what the Supreme Court has allowed, one could argue that it is. Just like what's happening in Illinois, New York, Oregon, California, the same thing that's happening in Texas, Florida, Tennessee.
All right. And would you say that this map that we're going to be voting on third read here soon, is that gerrymandered?
Well, again, you could look at certain areas like in St. Louis or Kansas City. We've heard different talks that it is gerrymandered. Now, again, it depends on what your definition is, and I think when you look at how some of these districts were drawn, could they have been drawn better? Sure. Could they have been drawn better to benefit Republicans? Sure. Could they have been drawn better to benefit Democrats? Absolutely.
All right.
And I think to a certain extent with Ann Wagner's district, as I mentioned, the District 2, I think that was drawn in a way that is a toss-up district, and that's something that I wish we would go more in line with Tennessee, Florida, and ensure that the Missouri values. We've come a long way for the past 10 years. I think historically, when we looked at where we were 10 years ago, we had a Democrat governor, Democrats statewide, and the state has trended in a more conservative fashion.
We're getting a little bit down the rabbit hole here, but since we're here, I'll ask you. So the amendment yesterday that would make Maryland Heights and other areas of northwest St. Louis County go into the 1st Congressional District, I'm guessing that would have made the 2nd Congressional District more right-leaning.
Well, I think that would be stronger in terms of conservative representation. I think that...
So did you vote for that amendment?
Well, I think that was a 6-2, correct?
I don't know.
It still had a little section of Kansas City.
I don't look that hard at the numbers at like Democrat, Republican.
Well, the maps that I voted for, or that I voted against yesterday, I saw that we were basically either keeping the status quo or going in the opposite direction. I did have a goal in mind when I had my amendment. Now, we could disagree on it, but I think that kept more of St. Louis County, St. Louis City together. We've all seen, as you know, with St. Louis City, the exodus of the population that has gone into St. Louis County and St. Charles County.
Right.
Keeping those communities of interest intact is a goal.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak on the bill for just a second.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I just heard that this map and some of the maps that were proposed yesterday were gerrymandered. I also just stated that I didn't hear anything about what it would take to get my vote on the bill or emergency clause. So for those reasons and for other reasons that I stated, specifically the 1st Congressional District going into South County rather than North County. I'll be voting no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion. Gentleman from New Madrid.
Mr. Speaker, speak on the bill.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, I've been a Republican and a conservative probably longer than some of these young people in this body has been on this earth. I came up here in 14 with a thing in my heart that says I was going to do first my conscience. That's how I was going to vote. Then I was going to vote with my constituents, what the people that sent me up here for. And third, I was going to vote for my caucus. And I think everybody here will agree that I do speak from my heart. I speak for the people of the state of Missouri now. We deserve better than what we're getting at the other end of the building. This end of the building, and I started in 17 talking about how we do our job. Is this map perfect? No. Do I like this map? No. Because I wanted the 8th to be different. But we have to start somewhere. And someone decided that it was going to start with us. We shouldn't be on this floor discussing and doing political rhetoric that I'm going to run for another seat. I'm going to get on the House floor where the TVs are going and the radio's going. We should be doing rhetoric here for the people of Missouri. The process starts here. Thank God it does start here. Then it goes down there. We cannot dictate, and I can tell the young people of this body, you cannot dictate what goes on down there. All you can do is when that comes back here, react to what they do to our bill. And that's why I got up to remind people, vote your conscience, vote your constituents, and then vote your caucus. And that's the way I've done my life up here, and it's worked pretty well. So that's, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Further discussion. Seeing none, gentleman from Jefferson, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the words from New Madrid. We've had many discussions on this. I've spoke with many people in this building about this map, about the process. It's time that we fulfill our process here, our obligation. Let the Senate do their work so we can get on with our work here. And with that, I renew my motion that House Committee substitute for House Bill 2117 be third read.
The gentleman from Jefferson has renewed his motion for the third reading passage of House Committee substitute House Bill 2117 with an emergency clause. All those in favor vote yes. All those vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 86 yes, 67 no, and 1 present, you have third read and passed House Committee Substitute House Bill 2117. Gentleman from Jefferson, you are recognized for the emergency clause.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move for the adoption of the emergency clause for House Committee Substitute for House Bill 2117.
The gentleman from Jefferson has moved for the adoption of the emergency clause. Discussion on the emergency clause. Gentleman from Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To inquire of the gentleman from the 113th, please.
Gentleman from Jefferson, do you yield?
I certainly do.
Proceed.
Thank you. Good morning.
I seem to think I know what might be coming.
Well, yeah.
If you've held true to the last several years, I think I know what's coming. But go ahead.
I think you're probably right. Is this emergency clause necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, or safety as required by the state constitution?
You know, I think you can interpret that many ways. And I think we have over the years interpreted that many ways. I think for us to have a safe, transparent, and trustworthy election, I think it would be in our best interest to offer an emergency clause, pass the emergency clause on this, so that it maintains some consistency on the filing dates and we don't have to go through any more hoops. I think by us passing an emergency clause here does just that, and I would remind the body that if we send an emergency clause over on the bill and they pass it without it, then it goes without it. This is an addition to the bill, a clause that says, hey, if you guys pick it up and pass it, and you want to pass an emergency clause, the bill would go into effect. And I would encourage the body to do that on the odd chance that maybe they pick it up and do it. If not, it's going to have to come back here, and I'm just trying to make sure that we can focus on the work over here, and I'm giving the Senate an option, and I think that's what we should do. We've given them the base bill. Do with it what you want. If you like it, let's be done with this. Let's go on about our business. Allow the governor to have time to review it so he can make a good decision and do what he feels is right. Go through the process. So this is just an opportunity to streamline the process.
Thank you. As the gentleman from New Madrid said, though, I mean, really, when it comes down to what we're doing, I mean, we concentrate on what we do and they do what they do, right? Okay, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak on the emergency clause.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you. You know, I don't see how this complies with the requirements at this time, and those that are outlined within the state constitution. I ask that the body vote this down. Thank you.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Jefferson.
To inquire the gentleman from Jefferson, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Jefferson, do you yield?
Sure.
Proceed.
Good morning.
It is. Nice to see you all dressed up today. You're looking spiffy, sir.
Thank you. I do put a suit and tie on occasionally. So, if we don't put the emergency clause in, the bill would then go into effect August 28th. Is that correct?
Regardless of whether it's on this bill or any bill that doesn't have an emergency clause, unless it's something special, it would go into effect August 28th.
Okay. So unless the governor called a special session to run concurrent, this bill would not take into effect until
this
after the
bill's
primary.
not in a special session, not concurrent.
It's not. I'm just saying that's the only way that we would actually get it done if we actually pass this bill without emergency clause is it was during a special session running concurrent. So otherwise it goes into effect August 28th.
Unless something happens differently, I don't know if the timeline would allow. I'm not exactly sure on a special session if we had one today and we ended it today. Exactly, there's some ambiguity in my own mind when that would go into effect. But right now, as this bill stands, before we pass the emergency clause, it would go into effect August 28th.
Okay, and the primary is August 2nd, correct?
I think I may have that date circled on my calendar.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to put a bill into effect after the date of a primary. It'd probably be helpful for people to actually know where they're running.
I don't disagree with you. I think it makes good sense to put an emergency clause on, adopt it here, send to the Senate, and if by some chance they find that this is the best option, they can pass the emergency clause and be done. If not, it'll come back and we'll have another opportunity to look at their work.
So, gentlemen, you saw how I voted on this last vote on your map.
Yes, sir.
I do agree we have a long process in this building. However, I also do think we have an obligation. There are certain constitutional obligations, and one of them is this congressional map. I think we should be doing our best to actually get this done before primaries.
I think by adopting an emergency clause, then we will have done everything that is our obligation to do. It goes to the other chamber, and they can do what they want. You know, the question is what happens, to your point, what happens if this emergency clause on this or any other redistricting bill doesn't take place? What happens when it doesn't go into effect till August 28th? And we had that discussion earlier in the fall about other possibilities of bills passing. How would that go into effect if an emergency clause wasn't there? The emergency clause is very clear what is needed for an emergency clause. The question is what happens if we don't, and how would it play out through the Secretary of State's office and the courts? I think it's in our best interest to give the Senate the option to pass an emergency clause and be done, or to go through the process and send something back. But I want to focus on other legislation in here. For the last 8 months, myself and many members of the committee have focused on this. This is very important to the state, but there's many more important items to come before this. What bill have we heard on this floor? We're almost to the end of January. It's redistricting. We have an obligation to the rest of the people of this state to move other legislation that they sent us here for. So I think whether you like the bill or not, I think this is an opportunity to support the process, to streamline the process, to allow us to get on with our constitutional obligations of working on a budget, supplemental budget.
We have other important things to do.
There is a mountain of stuff that still needs to be done in what figuratively could be a very short session.
So, gentlemen, while I voted no against your original map, and I understand we have a whole process that it's probably got to come back in some different form when it comes back from the east side of the building. Maybe at that point we can support it. I don't know. We'll see how things go. But I do support putting this in place as soon as possible. So while I disagree with the map, I do think the process needs to play out. I do believe this is an emergency to get it done and get it in place ahead of time before our elections to make sure that we have proper elections for that.
And gentlemen, when we talked about this the other day, you asked me, well, where are we going to be? I said, well, we have to do one thing first. We have to first get it perfected. We got that done. Then I don't know if we talked yesterday. I don't think we did, but I think then we got to get third read. If you notice, when I talked about third reading, I didn't talk about the emergency clause at all because it wasn't important at that point. Now it is important. It's the next step in the process, and it's our choice whether we want to give the Senate another tool so that if they pick it up and pass it and do the EC, we're done. If not, it comes through the process and we'll deal with it. But I would rather give them that option and let them decide instead of roadblocking them out because, I just think it's better.
If we want to point blame to somewhere, we could probably point to the federal government for delaying the census data. If we're going to try to, instead of picking fights in this chamber, maybe redirect our attention to who actually started this problem. And not releasing data was one of them. So while we disagree
we can
on
argue
the maps,
all kinds of things like that. Absolutely, Representative. I completely agree with you. We were throwing many curveballs along this process, from the data being late to different things happening to are we coming in or are we not. The thing is, we have to deal with the hand that's been dealt to us right now. And I'm very proud of this chamber, how they've handled it, how they've kept it above the table in here. I will tell you that those who didn't get the email with my cell phone number, it's 314-378. I appreciate all the phone calls the other night. I've returned most of them, and I appreciate the input and the feedback I got. We've stayed very statesmanlike in here, and I appreciate it. And, sir, I've enjoyed serving the 7 years with you, and we have disagreements often. But we also understand what's best for not only our districts, our counties, but for the state. And I appreciate your support today.
Thank you.
Further discussion. Gentleman from Howell.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, to speak in favor of the amendment.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, I remained silent during the long and varied debate, and I thought the arguments on all sides were excellent, and I respect those arguments. But in my core being, I felt that the committee had the best map under our Constitution of Missouri and the United States, and because of that is the one I supported. And I know people will disagree with me that it's our job to put the Constitution first. But I think it's totally and completely clear that everybody, all people in this state, expect us to make sure elections are done fairly and on time. And it would be a fundamental misresponsibility. We would not be responsible here on this floor if we didn't do our best efforts to make sure we followed the basic constitutional requirement that we assure our elections are done timely. And to me, it's a critical form of government, and it's hard for me to understand how that would not rise to the level of an emergency. Certainly, I believe most people in the state, regardless of party, would believe that if we mucked it up and didn't get it on time, they're going to blame us for not following our constitutional basic responsibilities. And regardless of how this was voted on in the closer vote earlier, and I respect those opinions, I think it's a mistake as a body. I think we're letting down all people in this state if we do not vote for an emergency clause to try to get our fundamental duties done. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion on the emergency clause. Lady from Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the emergency clause. Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to briefly say, I know that we've had lots of folks outline what specifically is in the Constitution for our emergency clause. The reality is that, yeah, this might cause some confusion. It's been 10 years since we've done this. Being up against the timeline that we've had, in my recollection, really hasn't been this bad before. But frankly, if this was an emergency and fit the outline of the Constitution for an emergency clause, why didn't the governor call an emergency special session to deal with this? This might cause some confusion. I heard someone say that we might get blamed for the chaos. But our job is not to vote on things based on what we get blamed for and what we don't get blamed for. Our job is to be able to sleep at night, vote for what we think our constituents want us to vote for, and to do our best here in this body, and to follow our Constitution. Right now, I don't know that this meets the guidelines of keeping the peace. Are we going to have that type of chaos because we're a little confused and have to sort this out? I don't know. I just don't necessarily think that all of this doomsday ceiling falling conversation around this emergency is necessary. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Further discussion. Seeing none, gentleman from Jefferson, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Lots of good comments, lots of good discussion on the emergency clause. It comes down to a very simple thing for me. Doing the right thing, making sure that we are able to do what we were sent here to do. This is but a small portion of that. And I would like to have the support of the body and vote yes on the emergency clause so we can get on with the work of this chamber, so that the Senate can get on work with their chamber work, and that we can do what the people sent us here to do. And I can tell you, regardless of how this vote goes, I'm going to sleep much better tonight knowing I voted my conscience, and I don't have to talk about this tomorrow. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
The gentleman from Jefferson has renewed his motion for the adoption of the emergency clause. All those in favor vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Mr. Clerk, please ring the bell and open the board. Has everyone voted? Mr. Clerk, please close the board and tally the vote. By your vote of 95 yes, 55 no, and 3 present, you have failed to adopt the emergency clause. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next order of business will be announcements. And I ask that you
Announcements.
recognize me for an announcement.
Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After announcements, I will be reminding the body that we will be making a recess motion for 2:30 this afternoon to recognize the state of the state and the governor of the great state of Missouri.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Jasper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Budget will meet immediately upon adjournment in House Hearing Room 3.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Ways and Means will meet immediately after session.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple of announcements. Members of your Special Committee on Tourism, we are noticed up to meet in House Hearing Room 5 at 6 p.m. this evening or upon adjournment of the afternoon session, whichever is later. Members of your Subcommittee on Appropriations General Administration, tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. in Joint Hearing Room 117.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Downsizing State Government will meet upon adjournment. Thank you.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Elections and Elected Officials will convene at 11:45 in Hearing Room 6.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Elementary and Secondary Education will meet immediately upon adjournment in Hearing Room 1.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Montgomery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Transportation will meet at 1 o'clock in Hearing Room 6.
Further announcements. Gentleman from Greene.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Consent and House Procedures will meet at 1 o'clock in Hearing Room 5.
Further announcements. Seeing none. Gentleman from St. Louis County.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With no further business coming before the body this morning, I now move the House stand in recess until 2:30 this afternoon, Wednesday, January 19, 2022, to welcome our governor for the state of the state.
The gentleman from St. Louis County has moved the House stand in recess till 2:30 p.m. this day. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The House is in recess.